Welcome once again to 2023 Recap. Today we'll review the most relevant events in Venezuela during this year. My name is Luis Alberto Matos and I'm pleased to present this annual summary. Let's begin. In Venezuela, a resounding yes vote triumphed in the referendum in defense of the country's historical rights over the Guayana Essequiba.
The referendum was held very early on Sunday, December 3rd. Over 20,690,000 people were summoned to answer 5 questions to determine Venezuela's position regarding the border conflict with Guyana. This referendum also served to rally all the people against imperialist attempts to take away Venezuela's right over the Essequiba Guayana.
The land belongs to all Venezuelans and we have to defend what is ours. It's been years since all of us Venezuelans have been united in a single block to defend our territory.
The Venezuelan indigenous peoples also raised their voice in defense of sovereignty over the Essequibo by hoisting the Venezuelan flag on the Paracaima mountain range while singing the national anthem in their ancestral language.
Responding to the serious provocation made on November 23 by Alir Fan, president of Guyana, subordinate to ExxonMobil, over there is the flag of Venezuela. The flag of Venezuela which commands respect, and the message is, do not provoke the people of Venezuela.
The result of this consultation was described as an overwhelming victory for the yes option. At the end of the day, President Nicolás Maduro stressed the commitment of the people to go to the polls.
The real victory is the awakening of the people, the union of all. We must feel proud of this time we are living because we are writing a new chapter in our history.
On its part, the National Electoral Council gave to the legislative and executive branches the participation of the final numbers on the vote for each question, with the yes option exceeding 95% of the votes.
It's been an extraordinary vote with an unprecedented turnout. We informed the people of Venezuela that we had a historic turnout of 10,431,907 Venezuelans came out to vote in this consultative referendum.
On December 3rd, Venezuelans were summoned to what was the 7th referendum over the past 24 years, but this is the first time a consultation on a border issue between nations has been held. President Maduro emphasized the binding nature of this referendum.
Is it binding or not? I say to public officials and to the people, it is indeed binding, as binding as can be.
Following the referendum on the Essequibo, the Venezuelan people is now making a strong case on a centenary or demand on the part of Venezuela. The government has said that the true victory will come the minute Guyana retains the Geneva Agreement and respect the territorial sovereignty of Venezuela.
The heads of state of Venezuela and Guyana held a high-level meeting to discuss the territorial controversy over the Guayana Essequiba. The meeting was arranged by CELAC, CARICOM, and the President of Brazil, Luis Inácio da Silva. With a handshake, the presidents of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, and Guyana, Irfan Ali, sealed an agreement to settle the territorial dispute over the Essequibo in accordance with the 1966 Geneva Agreement and international mechanisms. All parties reiterated in an agreement denominated the Argyle Agreement their commitment to Latin America and the Caribbean remaining a region of peace and addressing the issue of the Essequibo through dialogue. The meeting had several facilitators, such as the President of the Caribbean Community, CARICOM, Roosevelt Skerrit, and the head of the host government himself, Ralph Gonsalves, as pro tempore President of the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States, CELAC. Both nations will remain in contact and will hold a new meeting in Brazil next year.
Agreed that any controversies between the two states will be resolved in accordance with international law, including the Geneva Agreement dated February 17, 1966. Both states agreed to meet again in Brazil within the next 3 months or at another agreed time to consider any matter with implications for the territory in dispute, including the above-mentioned update of the joint.
After the high-level meeting in St. Vincent and the Grenadines with the President of Guyana and the President of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro returned to his country and pointed out that defending the truth of the country through dialogue and diplomacy pathways was monumental.
It has been worthwhile to defend the truth of Venezuela, to raise the flag of truth, to raise our historical reasons, and to seek with the Bolivarian diplomacy of peace the path of dialogue, of understanding, to manage the historical controversy as it should be through the path of dialogue, as it is the title of this agreement.
Earlier this year, in order to guarantee the well-being and political coexistence of Venezuelan people, the government of Venezuela reached in Bridgetown, Barbados, partial agreements with a sector of the opposition represented by the Venezuelan United Platform. Let's see the details.
These agreements take place within the framework of the resumption of dialogues between the government and the opposition sector in 2022. With the signing of two political agreements, we achieved the goals of guaranteeing understanding and peace in Venezuela. In this regard, Jorge Rodriguez, Venezuelan government's chief negotiator, described this dialogue as a historic event for all Venezuelans.
Un primer paso. A first step on the way in the wish of all Venezuelans is that these sanctions, real bombs, are people killers against our own people, that the necessary aggressions that especially affect the most vulnerable, which affect our children, our grandparents, our women, these sanctions that have attacked the social and economic structure, the life, the daily life of each of us, be progressively lifted.
Meanwhile, the head of the delegation of the opposition's unitary platform, Gerardo Blight, claimed that the agreements contribute to the construction of a better country.
The negotiation process does not stop. The negotiation process continues within the framework of the Memorandum of Understanding that was signed in Mexico City to develop the entire agenda contained in that Memorandum of Understanding. It is the way to achieve the well-being for the Venezuelan people, an inclusive democracy and a tolerance and political coexistence culture.
As stated by Jorge Rodriguez in the first partial document, it is established their rejection to any type of political violence against Venezuela, its state, and its institutions.
We commit ourselves to respect the electoral results, and we all commit ourselves to settle our political and social issues by the only means that this Constitution establishes as legitimate, legal, and efficient.
In this regard, the parties committed themselves to jointly promote before the National Electoral Council as the constitutional and governing body of the electoral processes a set of guarantees for all participants. In spite of the will initially expressed by the opposition sectors to fulfill this point, the President of the Parliament, Jorge Rodriguez, denounced a violation of the agreement signed in Barbados after the celebration of the primary event that led a sector of the extreme right to commit fraud and those generate the conditions for the political destabilization of the country. According to what was denounced by the head of the parliament, the electoral conditions of the pact in Barbados were violated by harming, in the first place, the identity of the citizens, and in the second place, positioning a political leader disturbing the counting of votes. As a second agreement, the negotiating parties agreed to protect the nation's vital interests, with one of the points being the defense of Venezuelan sovereignty over the Essequiba Guyana, making efforts to preserve the republic's asset abroad and defending the assets and property of Citgo Company.
After the negotiating delegations of the government of Venezuela and a sector of the opposition reached partial agreements in Barbados, the United States responded with a statement from the Department of the Treasury, which issued 4 general licenses suspending certain sanctions measures against the country.
In a meeting between the government and opposition negotiating delegations and President Nicolás Maduro, they reaffirmed their commitment to guarantee a climate of political tolerance and respect for sovereignty. Venezuelan authorities announced that the United States Department of State granted a broad license to the state oil company PDVSA.
The United States Department of the Treasury has issued a broad license for the production, marketing, exploration, sale, and export of Venezuelan oil. That is to say, the sanction is lifted for all Venezuelan oil activities for the sale and production of that product.
In this context, President Nicolás Maduro ratified the demand that all sanctions imposed against Venezuela must end in order to achieve economic independence.
As I said yesterday, the first step is being taken in the right direction for a progressive and sustained lifting of all sanctions. It is a matter of human justice that Venezuela regains all its economic freedom, all its commercial freedom to which any country in the world has the right, to which our people have the right.
Authorities confirmed that there are 4 licenses that came into effect during the month of October, and with this, facilitate some commercial operations and financial transactions for 6 months with possible extension. The licenses allow the state-owned oil company PDVSA to resume part of the production, marketing, sale, and export of oil, gas, and all hydrocarbon derivatives, as well as services for the Venezuelan energy industry. The measure reinstates the power of the Central Bank of Venezuela to manage certain financial operations focused on the sale of energy resources. It also authorizes the production and commercialization of gold and the exchange and sales of Venezuela bonds. The permissions were granted to the company Conviasa, which will allow it to operate and offer services and transactions for the repatriation of Venezuela citizens. In this regard, Vice President Delcy Rodriguez pointed out that the lifting of sanctions integrates Venezuela into the international composition and legality.
This is a great success for our country. We must congratulate all the efforts that have been made, and that this beginning of composition and international legality allows the complete lifting of the sanctions against Venezuela.
The lifting of sanctions will bring many positive effects, such as the production and export of oil, and in turn this will help the partial growth of the Venezuelan economy. Although these licenses are temporary, it is expected that they will be permanent to culminate with all the sanctions imposed on the Venezuelan government.
This year, 2023, marked 10 years since President Nicolás Maduro assumed the presidency of the country. Let's see what the Venezuelan president said in this regard. 10 years after that oath and 10 years later, here we are intact, standing, triumphant, and advancing towards the Venezuelan of prosperity, of happiness, of growth, towards the full Venezuelan of Bolivarian socialism. President Nicolás Maduro emphasized his satisfaction for what he had experienced during that time. I can truly tell you that 10 years later, I feel proud of the battle we have fought, of the Venezuelan people, and of the history we're writing and the history we're about to write. In this sense, the Venezuelan head of state emphasized, let no one have any doubt that we will guarantee all social rights created by the Constitution in revolution and defended by us. This was said by President Nicolás Maduro during a national radio and television broadcast on the occasion of his 10th anniversary as head of the government. Let us recall that the Venezuelan president took office as president in charge of Venezuela in March 2013, 3 days after the physical departure of Commander Hugo Chavez, until the presidential elections were held on April 14 of that year, when he was proclaimed winner of the elections by the National Electoral Council with 7,586,251 votes, which represented 50.61% of the votes cast. We have a short break coming up in our 2023 recap, but we'll be right back, so stay with us. Welcome back to 2023 Recap. Let's review the international agenda of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. In 2023, he made important visits to other countries where he signed agreements on trade, tourism, agriculture, industry, and technology. Let's review some of these visits.
In June, the president of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, visited Turkey in the framework of the inauguration of his counterpart, Recep Tayyip Erdogan. The state visit was also aimed at consolidating bilateral diplomatic relations and strengthening ties in the areas of tourism, agriculture, and finance. Continuing his tour of Eurasian nations, the Venezuela head of state was received with honors in Jeddah, the second most important city in Saudi Arabia. The agenda included a meeting with the Crown Prince and Saudi Prime Minister Mohammed bin Salman with the aim of strengthening political, diplomatic, commercial, and energy alliance between the two nations. During this meeting, the Venezuelan president promoted the recovery of oil prices. The Venezuelan president also toured several cities in the People's Republic of China in September, where he held meetings with various political, economic, civil, and cultural authorities of the Asian High-End. He was also received by President Xi Jinping in Beijing, where they signed a total of 31 working documents in the context of 17th meeting of the China-Venezuela High-Level Commission. The cooperation agreements include areas such as the Belt and Road, economy and trade, education, tourism, science and technology, health, airspace, and civil aviation, among others. After completing his official tour of China, the Venezuelan president arrived in Algeria, where he held a meeting with the government authorities in the city of Algiers, where they relaunched their diplomatic ties and agreed to draw up a cooperation map under the principles of shared benefit. In the same month of September, President Nicolás Maduro held a meeting with his Honduran counterpart, Xiomara Castro, with a view to strengthening bilateral ties. The meeting took place in Havana, Cuban capital, within the framework of the Group 77 plus China Summit. At the same meeting, the Venezuelan president met with the president of Nicaragua, Daniel Ortega, and with the highest authority of the African Union, Azali Assoumani, with whom he discussed the initiative to create cooperation mechanism in favor of the peoples. This is how the Venezuelan president spent part of his international agenda for 2023.
Through photographs, we will show you the world queen of the triple jump, Yulimar Rojas, Venezuelan athlete who stood out during the year 2023. Her first medal was at the Central American Caribbean Games, San Salvador 2023, where Yulimar wins the gold medal and breaks the record with 15.16 meters, with which, in turn, reached the minimum mark necessary for the Olympic Games in Paris 2024, being the first Venezuelan to qualify for that event. Then Rojas was crowned world champion of the triple jump in Budapest 2023, with a measurement of 15.08 meters, achieving the 7th world title of her career. To end the 2023 season, the Venezuelan athlete became champion of the 2023 Diamond League for the third consecutive time, after registering a jump of 15.35 meters, and took the award for Best Athlete of the Year in the women's field of the World Athletics Awards. With this award, Yulimar Rojas became the third woman in history to obtain 2 awards as Best Athlete of the Year, equaling U.S. athletes Marianne Jones and Sanja Richard-Ross. We tell you more about Venezuela this year. During his trip to China, President Maduro visited scientific and productive centers and financial institutions such as the BRICS Development Bank. More on this in the following material from our X account at Telesur English. Let's see. You can watch these and other materials of our multimedia in all platforms. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Spotify, because Telesur this year made the leap into the world of podcasts. This special edition of 2023 Recap comes to an end with a music video of the song Ni un pedazo by Cuban singer-songwriter Raul Torres, a tribute to the Venezuelan people in connection with the ratification of Venezuela's sovereignty over Guayana Esequiba during the consultative referendum held on December 3rd. Enjoy, and we'll see you next time.
Si alzas la voz y liberas tu mente y te hace sentir en todo el continente, si luego tu amor no tiene que ser como el mío, hoy todos iremos de una vez unidos nuevamente. Hoy vamos a defendernos hasta con los dientes. En nuestra casa de amores todos bien habidos, con el corazón afuera y con la sangre caliente. Vamos a luchar y a defender el Esequibo. Jamás le cambiarán el mapa a nuestra tierra, a nuestros niños en las escuelas. Ni siquiera en los llanos, ni siquiera en la sierra, no le quitarán un pedazo más a Venezuela. Vale la pena levantarte y no detenerte. Vale la pena reclamar lo que te pertenece. Aunque nuestros sueños de futuro sean divergentes, es hora de echar rodilla en tierra a toda nuestra gente. Jamás le cambiarán el mapa a nuestra tierra, a nuestros niños en las escuelas. Ni siquiera en los llanos, ni siquiera en la sierra, no le quitarán un pedazo más a Venezuela. Por la vino tinto que me consuela, un amor lindo por Venezuela. Le cambiarán el mapa a nuestra tierra, a nuestros niños en las escuelas. Ni siquiera en los llanos, ni siquiera en la sierra, no le quitarán un pedazo más a Venezuela. Ni siquiera en los llanos, ni siquiera en la sierra, no le quitarán un pedazo más a Venezuela. No le quitarán un pedazo más a Venezuela. No le quitarán un pedazo más a Venezuela. No le quitarán un pedazo más a Venezuela.
No, señor, no se le quita a Venezuela un pedazo.